Okay, so here we have the poem Fireflies, which again has some similarities to other Douglas Stewart poems, where the persona is framed as someone who is viewing this experience. They're not a participant, it is something that they are viewing out within nature. So clearly, we start off with the title Fireflies. Again, that's a very direct and literal um, hint to what the poem is about. Although what we see when the poem does start, it doesn't necessarily indicate that it's fireflies until partway through the poem. So it starts off with the word but, and what we see with that is that really makes us see that that the poem is starting in the middle of a conversation. So we always add but as some kind of conjunction as a way to continue on, and that's what we see in the poem there, that it's already in conversation and that everything's kind of in mid-motion already happening. So, but they are moving steadily, the height of a man, like a man among the dark trees holding a lantern, a clear small floating flame with a tinge of green, many small flames all climbing the stony mountain like an invisible arm. But no footholds move over the soft red dust, and no shadow ruffles the yellow boxed trees that the silver phalanges love. So what we have in the start there is we have this description where we see the sight of these fireflies, these lights flickering, and they are moving together steadily en masse, and they're at the height of a man. So as if a man is holding a lantern up in front of him, moving through the trees, so too are the fireflies moving together almost in that same kind of way. And they are some clear, small, floating flame. So we have again that sense of that metaphor where he's saying that these fireflies are floating flames. Okay, before they're hinted to like a man, like an invisible arm, but they are also, a floating flame, many small flames. So really saying they are this bright light. And they're all climbing the stony mountain. So these fireflies are climbing. So we get this sense they're really grasping and moving through this. And that is something that, is more of a human-like quality. We don't necessarily think of a firefly or anything like that being able to have that ability to fly. What we see though as that continues on, where we have the pause. So anytime you see the semicolon, what that is it's a longer pause. So it's a reflective pause, and it's put in there specifically so that the reader stops and then continues on. So we start off with all those the similes and metaphors about what is being seen, and then it moves to but no footholds move. So they're talking about the fact that as these fireflies are moving across the landscape, they're not doing anything. No foothold moves. So no rock, nothing is moved because they're floating in the air. So over the soft red dust, no shadow ruffles. So usually we have this picture of when think of a car driving through the desert and the dust billowing out the back like this ruffle. That's not happening. Okay? And the yellow box trees, the silver phalanges, which if you look down the bottom here, it tells you they're marsupials that live in trees, that they love. Okay? So they move past these yellow box trees where there are, these marsupials, indicating possums. But we're getting some quite evocative things there where they're evoking these memories. So that soft red dust, we think the desert. The yellow box trees, we're thinking of that true Australian landscape. Okay, and then he's using that more technical word to give that air of mystery. So the silver, again, it's that link to those reflective type qualities. And again, we have another pause right there, which I haven't drawn a line to, but there's another pause. And we have this change. Oh no, there are no men here. There are only fireflies. So again, the same way that Douglas Stewart in previous poems has suddenly alerted and said, no, this is what the poem is about. It's about the water lily. It's about the snow gum. It is about the fireflies. And there's that oh, and we have the oh is onomatopoeia. It's also repeated later on to really emphasize that shock and awe at this moment. So there are no men here. There are only fireflies, steadfast and radiant, travelling over the spur. So they're talking about steadfast. Now, something that's steadfast is really, giving it a good go, moving quite quickly, and getting on with it. And radiant is that, again, it's really those quite evocative words like radiant, really enhancing the beauty of these fireflies and how bright they are. So if something's radiant, it's really shining. And it's quite positive. So steadfast and radiant, travelling over the spur where the hot earth lies heavy in dust and silence. Okay, so it's hot earth. Again, we get that reference to almost the rural landscape, and again, where it lies heavy. So it's quiet. So nothing's moving, and it's dust and silence, and that again links to it being nighttime because we wouldn't see the fireflies if it was during the day. And again, we have a pause. But indeed, oh indeed, some army is moving here, some invisible power flashing in points of brilliance, unravelling over the earth its unearthly plans, uncanny to meet at night among the stones. So we have again this sense of, but indeed, oh indeed, so there's that surprise in oh. There's repetition there, both with indeed, which is someone being quite determined, saying yes. Some army. So again, we have this continuation of the fact that it's not a single firefly, it's a group. They're moving en masse. Okay, and some invisible power flashing. So this idea of this invisible force of nature that's really captivating what he is seeing is part of this distinctive, is that he's taking it and what, again, what someone might dismiss, he's really looking at that beauty and, brilliance and amazement that comes through from seeing these fireflies moving through that landscape. So unravelling over the earth. So you think of them moving, they're unravelling and floating across the landscape in its unearthly plans. So it's talking about that, it's really linking to that idea of the surreal, the magical in those words of unearthly. What is this? Is it real? Is it magic? Really drawing that fine line because of the amazement in these fireflies. And then we have this phrase uncanny, like it's very unusual to meet at night among the stones. So saying this is a rare occurrence. This is something that you won't normally see, not to this extent, not to this point. And so that's the poem, is we have this persona standing there, again, witnessing this amazing, sight within nature, this amazing force of nature, the grandeur. And it's surreal to them. It's magical. And that really comes across in the poem. What I would like to link you to as well is this down the bottom here where I've got this personification leading to anthropomorphism. So anthropomorphism is when, animals are given human qualities. It's, the kind of same way that we see animals in text that, have voices. So Wind in the Willows, things like that, where these animal characters are able to talk and react and interact in a human way, which is the way the fireflies are represented. And what this is with the animism is it creates, as it says there, that notion of a kind of human soul, so that these fireflies no longer become this insect or seen in that way, but they start to have these human, more interesting, more in-depth qualities. So this isn't necessarily that godlike qualities that we've seen in other poems, but it's that sense of giving this firefly something that we can equate to ourselves and these feelings and the way that it is moving. So what we really need to get out of this poem is, again, it's that persona looking at this scene, seeing what is in front of them, and really taking in and describing it in a very, in a way that really starts to link into lots of images that we understand and know that are part of the Australian landscape. So we will look at this more in class, but take all of that on and we'll do more in class.